Thank you for joining today's webinar for Livestock Agents, Responsibilities for Recording Movements. My name's Jodie Rosé O'Brien, and I'm one of the EID implementation team at Primary Industries. In today's webinar, we're going to cover a few topics. So why EID, what's changing, the key dates that you need to be aware of, how livestock agents can support sheep and goat producers, your reporting and recording obligations as livestock agents, where to get help and the key resources that are available. We're going to run a second webinar on the essential equipment rebate for livestock agents, and we'll also let you know how to be informed of changes and how to contact us. Our first speaker today is Denise Rendell. Denise has worked for Primary Industries for over 40 years in the fields of livestock production and animal health, based in various roles from the southeast to the west coast. And since 1998, Denise has been involved with animal identification and traceability, firstly with the implementation of EID and the National Livestock Identification System in cattle, then moving on to the implementation of visual sheep identification in sheep and goats in 2009, and now the implementation of EID and sheep and farmed goats. Thank you, Denise.
Thanks, Jodie. Good morning, everyone. Yes, everyone, the reason why we're changing to EID and sheep and goats is that our visual system is no longer really working well enough for us. And certainly we need to keep up and be in front of the pack in terms of identification and traceability. So back in 2020, there was an evaluation done through Sheep Producers Australia and SafeMate, and we looked at visual ID and traceability compared to electronic ID and traceability, and we actually did it on several thousand sheep that were going through Victorian abattoirs, and it involved sheep from all across Australia. So there were South Australian animals, Victorian, New South Wales, even animals from WA. So we found that visual ID was, we were only able to get back to the last place of residence for 70% of the cases with visual ID, whereas with electronic ID, we could actually do it in 99.6% of the time. So, you know, there's a huge difference in the timeframes. And if we're dealing with something like foot and mouth disease, then that time frame is absolutely crucial. We'd also found in previous exercises that the mob-based system wasn't actually allowing us to meet the National Livestock Traceability Performance Standard. So it was time that we actually had to change. So why we're changing? It's extremely important that we deliver accurate and timely traceability. The impact on a disease outbreak is phenomenal, and certainly for disease and chemical residue issues in the sheep and goat industries, we do need that accurate and timely traceability. Over the years, it has been estimated that foot and mouth disease actually, if it came into Australia, it would cost us $80 billion over a 10-year period. And we can never be complacent about foot and mouth disease. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but actually Germany itself has a foot and mouth disease outbreak at the moment. And since November of 2024, we've actually suspended a lot of meat and dairy type products from entering Australia from Germany, simply because of foot and mouth disease. So that's now 5 months almost. So it's a major reason why we want the best traceability system we can have. So EID, it's a tried and tested technology. It's been operating in Australia since 2004 nationally with the introduction of EID in in cattle. And in 2017, Victoria implemented it on a mandatory basis in sheep and goats. So it's been operating around Australia quite effectively in that time frame. And it's a really major, you know, we're really changing because our export markets are really important to us. 70% of our sheep meat, 95% of our goat meat, and 98% of our wool all are exported, and so having a good traceability is important for all of those markets. So just to recap in terms of how the system works, it actually combines 3 elements to enable the lifetime traceability of an animal, which is something we couldn't actually achieve with visual ID, but we can with electronic, because of course the animal's tagged with a permanent identification device. It's unique to that animal. There will never be another device of the same number. It's linked to a physical location that the animal resides on through the property identification code, which all properties with sheep, goats, and cattle, for instance, must have one of these. And then everything's linked under a national database where all of the movements are recorded. So in January of this year, amendments were made to the livestock regulations, which are underpin the Livestock Act of 1997, and they came into effect on January 1 of this year. And so that supported the changes to sheep and goat tagging, scanning, and reporting obligations throughout the sheep and goat supply chain. And this actually does include livestock agents. And I'm not talking about when you're operating at a sale yard, but some of your day-to-day work. So what are the time frames? From January 1, 2025, anything that's born after that date will have to have an electronic ID tag applied to it before it leaves the property of birth. The processors have started scanning EID tags when they do have sheep or goats coming through with those devices. Producers need to do property-to-property movements where animals are EID tagged, and you as livestock agents will also need to start scanning, recording any of your on-farm auctions with where the animals are identified with the EID tags. On July 1, the sale yards will also begin scanning and recording. And then at the beginning of January 2027, this is basically when the transition period stops and all sheep and farm goats must be tagged with an EID tag before leaving the property, and everything will be scanned from then on in. So from that period between January 1, 2027, 2025 and to 1 January 27, we'll actually be operating a hybrid system where both a mob-based system will be in operation for anything that continues to be visually ID'd, so the older sheep and goats, but also we'll be coming through with the younger sheep and goats that will all have electronic ID. So in consultation with industry, this 2-year transition period was put in place to offset the cost burden and allowing older sheep and goats to move out of the system with their existing visual tags. But as I said before, from January 1, 2027, it'll be fully implemented and all sheep and goats will be required to be identified with an EID tag, and it'll be fully operational in South Australia. So this means that nationally, all sheep and farm goats moving anywhere will have to be ID'd with an electronic tag, and all movements recorded on the NLS database. Just a bit of a reminder, so an electronic ID device is a tag with a microchip in it. It's unique to the animal and can be scanned using a variety of hand scanners, panel readers, auto drafters. Think of it like a car. The tag has an RFID number, which is linked to a visual code. So the RFID number is like the VIN number of a car, and the visual code, which is called the NLS ID, is like the number plate on a car. So those two numbers coexist on the NLIS database. And the RFID, you'll see it will start with a 9, then might be 951 or a 982, 964, depending on the manufacturer. But the NLIS ID or the number plate will always start with a PIC, and this is much more meaningful to producers. It then has some coding about the manufacturer, and importantly, it has some coding about what species and whether it's a breeder tag or a post-breeder tag. So for sheep, the second letter is always going to be an S for a breeder tag. It'll be a T for a post-breeder tag, so the pink tag. And goats, it will be K if it's a breeder tag and L for a post-breeder tag. So that's really important for producers when they're buying their tags, that they buy species-specific tags. And they're, as I said, they're also recorded on the database as being specific to goats or sheep. So some of the common questions producers are asking is, look, I've got some older sheep that were born before January 1, 2025. They've got visual tags. Do I need to put an EID tag in them? The answer is no. Provided that animal was born before 1 January 2025, it can still move through the system until 1 January 2027 with just the visual tag. Will I need to double tag older sheep with EID after 1 January 2027? The answer is yes. So these animals are likely to have a visual tag that's put on by the breeder, particularly if it's no longer on its property birth, and then it will then likely get a post-breeder tag. But if it's still on the property of birth, it will get a EID tag, which is a breeder tag as well. And it can be any one of those 8-year colours for those animals. One thing I do tell producers and you as agents I need to know is that if a producer has been using the electronic management tags, which are non-NLIS electronic tags, they'll need to cut out that tag because you can't have 2 electronic tags on the ears of sheep or goats, simply because the wrong tag is likely to get read and uploaded to the database. I certainly see in abattoir uploads with sheep that there are management tags going through, but they're going to need to be cut out before another EID tag is put in, because it simply means that the animal is not traceable. So it's necessary.
Denise, I might just jump in there. A quick question we've had it a bit is about how can you tell the difference between a management tag that's non-NIS accredited and the accredited tags?
The simple thing is that all of the NIS tags will have the logo that you'll see on screen. So it will have that map of Australia with the letters ID in it, incorporated in it. The management tags will not have that logo. So all of the management tags will not have the logo. The actual NLIS tags will have the logo.
Thank you.
The other common question producers ask is, do I need to follow the year of birth colour in the sequence that it is? And no, you don't. In South Australia, it remains voluntary. The only state where it is mandatory to follow the year of birth colour is Western Australia. Every other state, it's voluntary. A lot of producers do use that colour system and use it in the sequence as you see on screen, but not everyone. There is a small percentage that do use all of the colours, but in a different order, for instance. The one key thing is that pink is the only colour that can be used as a post-breeder tag. So that's for an animal that has moved on to another property, it's lost its tag, it gets a pink post-breeder tag. And that's registered to the property. The the post-breeder tag is registered to. Another thing that we commonly get asked, some people in the past have used brown and grey. They are not part of the 8-year colour scheme, and they're not NIS accredited. They can't be uploaded to the database these days. So don't allow your producers to try and order brown or grey. And because they're not uploaded to the database, they've got no traceability benefit whatsoever. For the producers, do they need to buy pink post-breeder tags as well? And the answer is probably. If they buy in any sheep or goats, farm goats, then at some stage an animal's going to lose its tag. They don't have to buy large amounts of them, just have a small supply on hand in case an animal loses its tag. And that's the only situation where they'll need to have post-breeder tags. So if an animal does lose its EID tag, it's not the end of the world. If the animal was born on the property, it can be replaced with another breeder tag. It might not be the correct year colour. So say it was an older animal, you didn't have any of these. So it was a red tag, for instance, and you didn't have any more red tags on hand. If you've got, say, this year's year colour is white, you could use a white tag on it. So you don't have to follow the year birth colour for those animals if you're reapplying a breeder tag. And always for an animal that's not born on the property, it must be a pink post-breeder tag. So what if there's a problem with retention with EID on farm? Just so that you know, all of the tags actually go through a 3-year accreditation phase. So they're checked for readability, retention, breakages, all of these things, and it's quite a strict criteria. And they get scanned, read and scanned, and checked 4-5 times over that 3-year period. And then a final assessment is made whether the tag should continue to be fully accredited or not. The other thing is that the placement of the tag in the ear is actually really critical for retention. I have seen in the past a lot of people put them on the very edges of the ears. So it means that they're much easier to pull out. They really do need to be in the center of the ear to have the best retention rate. So all producers should be looking at their manufacturer's recommendations when they're applying ear tags. But if there are issues, then there are 2 ports of call. One is Integrity Systems Company, which have a complaints form on their website, but also the tag manufacturer itself. And they must report all complaints they have to Integrity Systems Company as part of their accreditation. So no matter what, all of these complaints get investigated and to determine what the issue might be. Can I use sheep EID tags on goats and vice versa, or even cattle? And the answer is no, because as I said before, all of these tags are actually specific to the type of animal that they're put on. And that also helps us with traceability, simply because there are diseases that, say, sheep get, that goats don't get, that are exotic to Australia, or issues that are specific to one type of animal. So it helps us with traceability. It limits the number of animals that we may have to trace. So it's really important that the correct tags are used on the correct types of animals. So what about you as agent? From January 1 of this year, so if you're holding an on-farm auction, so a ram sale, a clearing sale where, people are selling off their sheep, or a sale where they're just reducing their flock. If they are tagged with EID tags, then you need to scan them and transfer them on the database. One of the important things that has changed is that with the visual system, we were allowing 7 days for that. Now, to come into line with the rest of Australia and to come into line with cattle, everything is now 2 days. So if you're conducting a ram sale, clearing sale, dispersal sale, reduction sale, it's 2 days. You've got to have them scanned, and within the next 2 days, have that uploaded to the NIS database. With the visually tagged sheep, if they're sold by an on-farm auction, then you can still continue to use the mob-based movement on the database. The other thing is that so that you know, producers who move or buy sheep or goats and bring them onto their property with the ID tags and they've bought them from another producer, they will need to scan and record them on the database within 2 days as well. If you as an agent are doing those recording those movements on behalf of your clients and you'll need to use the non-written authority function on the database under livestock moved. So you might not be quite used to that. You've done it with mob-based movements in the past, but it's the livestock move, so it will be exactly the same as a cattle transfer. What I do recommend highly, because this catches producers out on their LPA audits, you need to put in the NVD serial number into the transfer. It just helps lock in a lot of information under that one piece of paperwork. If there's no NVD number, or if you put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, then when they get audited, it's just a bit harder to prove the linkage between the paperwork and the animals themselves. And the other thing is that please use the correct date of movement, not I'm uploading today, so I will put in today's date. If they moved 3 days ago, put in that date. Even if they moved a week ago and you're doing the transfer late, put in the correct date. That's a really vital piece of information for traceability if there is a disease outbreak, because it may mean the difference between including some animals and excluding some animals. So really important to use the correct date.
Denise, can I just ask a quick question here that's come through on the Q&A? So, and I think this referred to where we were talking about pink tags and post-breeder tags and having animals born on property. Do those additional, the question is, do the additional PIC numbers need to be listed on the NVD if all have EID?
If it's all EID, we will not have to use the additional PIC numbers because the history will be with the animals. But if there's a combination of visual, say, and a post-breeder EID, still include the visual, the PIC that's on the visual tag, simply because that creates the linkage on the paperwork with those animals. Because it doesn't have with the visual tag, it means that you don't have that electronic or database linkage with the animal, whereas you do get it with an EID.
Thank you.
So from January 1, 2025, property movements involving EID tagged sheep and goats must be scanned and recorded on the database within 2 days. It is the legal responsibility of the producer receiving the stock to record those movements on the database. You as agents aren't responsible for doing that, but a lot of producers think that you are. Please make sure that everyone's aware of who's going to be doing what. I commonly get that I thought the agent was supposed to do that when producers contact us about animals that haven't been transferred. So the property to property movements are basically moving animals between the different picks and they could even be owned by the same entity, the same family, the same company. But if they're moving from one pick to another pick, then they've got to be transferred. The other situations are for property are buying animals online, selling platforms such as Auctions Plus or Farmgate, buying livestock directly from another property, and moving animals on agistment. So all of those situations are property to property movements. So make sure, as I said before, that your client is aware that they are responsible, but if you but have the discussion with them to make sure who's going to do the transfer. And this is the reason why producers have the potential to get a rebate on scanning equipment. So livestock move with non-written authority, that's your way as an agent of recording an EID movement. So it will look slightly different on if you're using the NIS database. You may be using AgriNow software, and so it'll look totally different to this, but this is if you are doing it through your NIS database account. You'll get this livestock move non-written authority screen up. What it will ask you for in the first big box is that's where you can put the list of all of the RFIDs. But the important things are to list the NVD number, the correct movement date, and when it asks for the authoriser's name, the authorising person is the producer that's requesting the transfer, not you as an agent. It is the person that's asked you to do the transfer on their behalf. Sometimes you might hear about a transfer which we refer to as a sighted transfer. This is commonly used at showgrounds, and sometimes I know that you as agents are asked to scan livestock at showgrounds. So it is a slightly different, it's not a full transfer. Basically, it's saying that this animal or group of animals was seen here at the showgrounds on a certain date. It's not moving them off a pick onto another pick. It's just saying, I was here on this date. So that's where you put in a list of all of the devices, the pick of the showgrounds, and the date. There is certainly some other information here, such as there are GPS coordinates that some scanners can put in as well, but basically it's the date, the pick of the showgrounds, and the electronic tag number. And you might put in a comment saying it was the Borough Show or the Jamestown Show, for instance. But you might get asked on occasion to do this. This, however, isn't a function that's available to you in your agent account. The Show Society would have this function available to them in their own account. Some other things for you as agents are, so that you're aware, or as a reminder, only stock that are purchased at a sale yard can be transferred onto your agent pick. So this should only occur if the sale yard operator can't be advised of the buyer pick or where the animals are going to. If you can do it within within 24 hours of the sale and advise the sale yard where these animals are destined to, then I suggest you give the sale yard that information. Otherwise, you as an agent will be required to transfer any of these animals to your buyer within 2 days. And you will be continually sent emails until the animals are transferred off. But legally, you must do that within 2 days of them being transferred to your agent pick. If for some reason you're buying animals for someone who doesn't actually have a pick, these animals will get transferred to your agent's pick, but you need to contact PIRSA and get arrangements made to get this producer registered with a pick. And this applies for both mob-based movements onto an agent pick, or if you buy animals with electronic tags, the livestock moved off agent's pick. So these are the two functions that you're going to use. So the mob-based movement off an agent pick for anything that's identified with a visual tag from a sale yard, or if it does have electronic tags. So say you're buying out of a Victorian sale yard, then it will get transferred to you as a livestock transfer, just like cattle does, and you'll need to use this livestock moved off of an agent pick function in your account. One thing that always seems to cause grief for agents and anyone is, oh, we've done something, we've got an error message or a warning message. Please get it sorted out at the time. If a transfer returns an error message, it actually means that the transfer has not been recorded on the NLIS database. So occasionally it might be because a producer is recorded as being dead. It might be because the animals have actually been moved subsequently to another property after the date that you're using in your transfer. But please don't, if that occurs, please don't go and try and rectify it by just putting in today's date and the transfer goes through, because you could be ripping those animals off of a property that the animals have recently been moved to, and that creates more issues further down the track. If the transfer returns a warning message, then something might not have matched. Just make sure that the wrong pick hasn't been used, or the pick that has been used is invalid. So someone's put in two numbers around the wrong way, or even that the pick has been cancelled. Unless you know the reason, don't just try and fix it, because it could result in a lot more hassle in trying to get it corrected in the end, because one, you've only got a certain amount of chances to correct something. So the thing is, if it needs to be corrected, you need to get it corrected correctly. And the best people to speak to about that is NIS support. So you ring the 1-800-683-111 number. And in your database account, besides getting emails that will actually tell you that there are error messages or warning messages, in your account, there's a few ways you can view your transaction history. In your account, you also have this thing where it says inbox. So this is actually from my account. I've done transfers to the pick register. I've uploaded some tag statuses. Hey, I make mistakes too. I tried to do a third party property to property, and I must have put in a tag incorrectly. So I've got an error. It's telling me I've got an error. If I open that up, it'll tell me exactly what the error was. I could have even put in a date in the future, and of course the database won't accept future dates. The other one is a warning. So I can open all of these up, see what the problem is, and then if I need to go in and rectify it. So an error message is quite likely that I will need to actually redo the transfer. So as I said, if I put in a future date, so I'd say I tried to put in something in April and I'm only in March, then the database won't like it. Please make sure that you check your records. One of the other things that we're promoting to producers, and look, you as an agent can also use this app, even though I know you've got other things available to you, but this could be a simple and quick way of looking at something. It's the NLS Buddy app. For producers, it can be used on an Android or Apple phone or iPad or tablet. you can, some of the scanners will actually Bluetooth to this app, and they can actually download lists of tags, for instance. But if someone wants to do just a transfer of, say, one animal, or just simply quickly check something, they can do that with this app. It's free. It's been developed by someone who actually has spent a lot of time doing a lot of transfers and correcting transfers, particularly in the processing sector. So, and we do have a video coming soon. So check the AWI extension SA channel. Scanning equipment, as you're fully aware, there's a whole range of stuff out there, ranging in size, price, functionality, compatibility with the app, but we're well aware of that. In terms of resources, there's a whole range of resources available to you, besides just the resources that PIRSA has developed through, which are all available on the PIRSA and Goat EID webpage. But there's also a whole raft of resources that have been developed by Integrity Systems Company. So there are tech tips on how to do a whole number of transfers that are available to you as agents, but also to your clients. There's also a whole lot of Integrity Systems have done a number of little videos as well from their webinars on how to do transfers. So please make yourself aware of those. One of the things that we are doing shortly is that we're going to be having a training session for some of your support staff as well, so that they can be the champions for your organisation. So that's coming up on the 3rd of April, when we'll be doing that training session with them. The other thing to note is that Integrity Systems Helpline, their customer support service is now available on weekends as well. It didn't always used to be, but it is now. So admittedly, it's Eastern Standard Time, but there is support available even on weekends. So questions?
Quick one here, Denise. And it is probably recapped on some of what you've talked about, is what happens during the transition period with both visual and EID tags?
Okay. So in the transition period, you can do either transfer. So if the animals are visually tagged only, then you can continue to use a mod-based movement transfer. If they have electronic ear tags, then you'll need to do the transfer with the RFIDs included. And you'll see that there's a slight modification in the actual function if you look at the database, where it actually asks you the number of animals that are in the transfer. So for instance, if there was a combination of visual and electronic IDs in the mod that you're selling or involved with, say you had 500 sheep, 400 were identified with electronic tags, you'd scan those 400, but you would say that there were 500 in the transfer. So it's actually then doing the full 500 in that transfer, and you won't have to do 2 transfers, okay? So that is covered. It does sound a bit complex, but computers can work out anything.
Fantastic. That's a perfect segue into the next question, is will there be new NVD books?
The NVDs, as they currently exist, do ask you roughly how many animals are identified with EID and visual tags, but at the moment, there won't be new NVD books that might come down next year or maybe the year after.
Thank you. And on the same tone, do producers need to reconcile lost dead animals on the database?
They don't. However, if they want to keep their up to date, they can do so. And usually the ideal time for doing that is when they are bringing all the sheep together. So whether they scan them at shearing, for instance, and also any tags that they have on hand. That's the point when you would do a reconciliation. But it's not something that's mandated by the state departments. Might just be recommended by LPA to do that.
Thank you. Another question. What percentage of animals need to be tagged and scanned?
Our expectation is that everything is tagged and everything is scanned. That is what the legal requirement is. And so that's what our expectation is ultimately.
And Denise, further to that, there would be the same expectation that that the upload is done within 2 days?
That's correct.
Thank
You
you.
know, that is really important for us for our traceability.
Thank you. A couple of questions here. Just could you re-clarify about agents' responsibilities when we're talking about Auctions Plus or Farmgate, for example, for agents, please?
In that situation, it's the producer that is buying the animals that are responsible for doing the transfer. Okay, so they're the ones that are required to do it. However, some producers will expect their agent to do it. So that does need to be clarified. If you're got a producer who is buying animals, you need to have the conversation with them to say, it's your responsibility and I will be doing the transfer for you, or to say, no, it's your responsibility, you need to do the transfer.
Thank you. Another one here. If I'm bringing stock from interstate, what do I need and what goes on the NVDs?
Okay, if you're bringing stock in from interstate and they're going onto another property, you must make sure that with sheep, you must make sure that they are accompanied with a sheep health declaration and everything is completed. And those documents accompany the animals on their journey. If the animals are coming from Western Australia, then in Western Australia, it's actually mandatory for them to put the destination on the actual vendor declaration that's coming in with those sheep or goats. So if they don't, they need to actually be saying where the animals are going, not that they're going to Elders or SAL Naracoorte or Nutrien at Borough. They actually need to specify exactly where those animals are going. Otherwise, the producers, say in Western Australia, can actually be fined by the Western Australians, but it also makes it very difficult for us in South Australia to make sure that the animals have been transferred. So please ensure that if you're responsible for buying sheep interstate, that the appropriate information is put on the NVD for the destination of the animals. And if it's sheep, then you must have a sheep health declaration.
Fantastic. One more here. Who was responsible for the equipment, scanning, reporting, and uploading? So a few things there to the database at a sale yard.
Okay, so that's the operator of the sale yard. And it doesn't matter whether it's a council-owned sale yard, a privately owned sale yard, or a sale yard owned by a conglomeration of agents. They are all the sale yard operators in that respect. So it's their responsibility to do all of the transfers. And as I said, that must be done within 2 days.
Okay. Got another question here. Sorry, I was going to move on to Julie. One more question. And Willem, I think we touched on this before. Will it become mandatory for breeders in South Australia to tag new season lambs with the correct ear colour tag, just like Western Australia?
No, none of the states, except Western Australia, see any great benefit in that. It's certainly a management thing that helps producers, it helps you as agents, but in terms of traceability, all I'm after is a tag number, an ID number. There's no need to mandate that. It's just that as long as one of those 8 year of birth colours are used, we're happy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Denise, for your presentation. If people have got questions in relation to the National Livestock Identification System, Tara and Denise's contact details are there. If you have equipment rebate questions, please contact Julie Wedderburn. If not, you can contact myself. We also encourage you to subscribe to our mailing list. Thanks and have a great day.